Hey guys, welcome to another tutorial, and today's tutorial is going to be about the infinite loop effect. So here's one example. So the concept is that everything's moving in either, in this case, an inward direction towards the middle or an outwards direction, like towards the edges of the screen. So another good example of this effect is in this level, Alpha by Ilrel. And let me skip ahead to where the effect happens. So right here, as you can see, it's generally the same thing, except in this case, instead of being curved, these lines are straight, and then they're moving in an outward direction as opposed to inward. So this effect involves the new rotate trigger that came with the new update 2.1. And if you don't know how to use the rotate trigger yet, just stick around. You'll learn it with this tutorial. It's pretty easy to learn. So for now, let's just get rid of these triggers, and then just reset all these groups so we can start from scratch. So what I've done here is I made two spirals, one facing towards the right and another facing towards the left. The way I made those was I used these three lines and I copy and pasted them while rotating it, and copy and pasted it while rotating, and then kept doing that until I got some kind of curve. This is what you do to get a circle, but in this case I just did it like partially, and then once you do that enough times, you'll get something like this, like two curves facing opposite of each other like that, and then you'll just move this one over to here. And then after you do that, you can just select the whole thing, copy paste it. You can either freehand rotate it each time, or what I did is I used this 45-degree rotation a few times, and then I freehanded it like that. You could do this, or what Ilrel did is I think he did pretty much the same thing, except instead of curved lines, he did the same thing with straight lines like that, and with either the 45-degree rotations or freehand. Just the same thing pretty much. So let's just undo this for now. Okay. So now we have these two spirals. So what this effect is doing is it's just having two designs, in this case spirals, in opposite directions, moving in opposite directions. So first let's set this to group 1. That's our next free, group 1. And we want this to rotate to the right in a clockwise direction. So here's where we start using our rotate trigger. So we have this, and what this spiral we would call is our target group ID. It's what we want to rotate, like what we want to move in a rotational motion. But in here, with the rotate trigger, we also have to have a center group ID. We have to have something that our target will revolve around. So for our center, what I've created is this dot right here, and it's just smack in the middle, and we'll set this to group 2. So now that we set this rotate trigger, we can set our center to group 2, which is where that dot was, and now we get to our direction and movement. So times 360 and degrees are pretty much the exact same thing. They do the same thing, except times 360 will always do complete rotations, whereas degrees can do like 90 degrees or 180 degrees partial rotations. So here we'll just do a complete rotation 360 degrees, and we'll set the time to 1. Now here we have lock object rotation checked off, and what lock object rotation does is pretty self-explanatory. It literally locks your object rotation. Here's an example. Let's set the time longer. So what it will do is it won't have your blocks actually rotate. They'll just move in a circular motion while staying like static. So as you can see, it looks like that, and it looks pretty bad when you do that. So let's just turn off lock object rotation. So we have this movement, and now we're gonna do the same thing with this, except we want to move in opposite direction. So we set this to a new group 3 in this case, and then we're gonna make a new rotate trigger. So for this one, we don't have to make a new center group because that dot is in the center of both group 1 and group 3. So we can just reuse that center group, but then we change the target. Now here we want to change the direction because we want them to move in opposite directions. So here we can just put -1. We want them to be the same, so like -2 with 2, -3 with 3, so on, because we want them to move the same rate in the opposite directions. So now that we do this, it should work just like that. But let's have it move with our icon. So what I'm going to do is just set the entire group to the next free group, which should be group 4, and I'll just plop down a move trigger right here. So now that we have this, we have our working infinite loop effect. Well, I messed up that move trigger. I have to set it to 4. Okay, now this should work. So now we have that. You can notice that earlier in the video when I showed you this at first, it was all converging towards the middle, but now it's going outwards. And the reason for that is that this is moving right, but before it was moving left. Let me explain that better. So the direction you rotate the spirals can change whether it goes to the middle or outwards. So in this case it was moving right, but if I change it left and then change the other one to move right, now you would get that motion where it looks like it's all going towards the center. So it just depends on which way your patterns are moving. Now this doesn't have to be solely only for spirals or like these curves. You can do them with straight lines, as you saw in Ilrail's level, or like with like some weird curvy patterns. I don't know. It's just for you to experiment with. But that's the end of the tutorial. Hope you enjoyed it, and I'll see you in the next video.